Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast. All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
Today, Emily and I are going to continue in the encyclical. We are getting close to wrapping it up here. The encyclical we're reading is The Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality, Guidelines for Education Within the Family. And we are in section, what section are we in?
6.
I have to scroll back down. 6. Thank you. I went to the top to make sure I got the name right. So, okay, section 6, learning stages. And this is a really long section, so we're going to break this up into 2 parts. So we'll do the first part this week and then the second part next week. So let's get started. Learning stages. Parents in particular have the duty to let their children know about the mysteries of human life, because the family is in fact the best environment to accomplish the obligation of securing a gradual education in sexual life. The family has an effective dignity which is suited to making acceptable without trauma the most delicate realities and to integrating them harmoniously in a balanced and rich personality. As we have recalled, this primary task of the family includes the parents' right that their children should not be obliged to attend courses in school on this subject, which are not in harmony with their religious and moral convictions. The school's task is not to substitute for the family. Rather, it is to assisting and completing the work of parents, furnishing children and adolescents with an evaluation of sexuality as value and task of the whole person, creating male and female in the image of God. In this regard, we recall what the Holy Father teaches in Familiaris Consortio. The Church is firmly opposed to an often widespread form of imparting sex information disassociated from moral principles that would merely be an introduction to the experience of pleasure and stimulus, leading to the loss of serenity, while still in the years of innocence, by opening the way to vice. Therefore, 4 general principles will be proposed, and afterwards the various stages in a child's development will be examined.
4 principles regarding information about sexuality. Each child is a unique and unrepeatable person and must receive individualized formation. Since parents know, understand, and love each of their children in their uniqueness, they are in the best position to decide what the appropriate time is for providing a variety of information, according to their children's physical and spiritual growth. No one can take this capacity for discernment away from conscientious parents.
Each child's process of maturation as a person is different. Therefore, the most intimate aspects, whether biological or emotional, should be communicated in a personalized dialogue. In their dialogue with each child, with love and trust, parents communicate something about their own self-giving, which makes them capable of giving witness to aspects of the emotional dimension of sexuality and could not be transmitted in other ways.
Experience shows that this dialogue works out better when the parent who communicates the biological, emotional, moral, and spiritual information is of the same sex as the child or young person. Being aware of the role, emotions, and problems of their own sex, mothers have a special bond with their daughters and fathers with their sons. This natural bond should be respected. Therefore, parents who are alone will have to act with great sensitivity when speaking with a child of the opposite sex, and they may choose to entrust communicating the most intimate details to a trustworthy person of the same sex as the child. Through this collaboration of a subsidiary nature, Parents can take advantage of expert, well-formed educators in the school or parish community or from Catholic associations.
The moral dimension must always be part of their explanations. Parents should stress that Christians are called to live the gift of sexuality according to the plan of God, who is love, in the context of marriage or of consecrated virginity and also celibacy. They must insist on the positive value of chastity and its capacity to generate true love for other persons. This is the most radical and important moral aspect of chastity. Only a person who knows how to be chaste will know how to love in marriage or in virginity.
From the earliest age, parents may observe the beginning of instinctive genital activity in their child. It should not be considered repressive to correct such habits gently that could become sinful later, and when necessary, to teach modesty as the child grows. It is always important to justify the judgment of morally rejecting certain attitudes contrary to the dignity of the person and chastity on adequate, valid, and convincing grounds, both at the level of reason and faith, hence in a positive framework with a high concept of personal dignity. Many parental admonitions are merely reproofs or recommendations, which the children perceive more as the result of fear of certain social consequences or related to one's public reputation, rather than arising out of a love that seeks their true good. I exhort you to correct, with the greatest commitment, the vices and passions that assail us in every age. For if in some stage of our life we sail on, deprecating the values of virtue and thereby suffer continuous shipwreck, we risk arriving in port devoid of all spiritual charge.
Formation in chastity and timely information regarding sexuality must be provided in the broadest context of education for love. It is not sufficient, therefore, to provide information about sex together with objective moral principles. Constant help is also required for the growth of children's spiritual life, so that the biological development and impulses they begin to experience will always be accompanied by a growing love of God, the Creator and Redeemer, and an ever greater awareness of the dignity of each human person and his or her body. In the light of the mystery of Christ and the Church, parents can illustrate the positive values of human sexuality in the context of the person's original vocation to love and the universal call to holiness.
Therefore, in talks with children, suitable advice should always be given regarding how to grow in the love of God and one's neighbor, and how to overcome any difficulties. These means are discipline of the senses and the mind, watchfulness and prudence in avoiding occasions of sin, the observance of modesty, moderation in recreation, wholesome pursuits, assiduous prayer, and frequent reception of the sacraments of penance and the Eucharist. Young people especially should foster devotion to the Immaculate Mother of God.
To teach children how to evaluate the environments they frequent with a critical sense and true autonomy, as well as to accustom them to detachment in using the mass media, parents should always present positive models and suitable ways of using their vital energies, the meaning of friendship and solidarity in the overall area of society and of the church. When deviant tendencies and attitudes are present, which require great prudence and caution so as to recognize and evaluate situations properly, parents should also have recourse to specialists with solid scientific and moral formation in order to identify the causes over and above the symptoms and help the subjects to overcome difficulties in a serious and clear way. Pedagogic action should be directed more to the causes rather than to directly repressing the phenomenon. And if necessary, they should seek the help of qualified persons, such as doctors, educational experts, and psychologists with an upright Christian sensitivity.
The objective of the parents' educational task is to pass on to their children the conviction that chastity in one state in life is possible and that chastity brings joy. Joy springs from an awareness of maturation and harmony in one's emotional life, a gift of God and a gift of love that makes self-giving possible in the framework of one's vocation. Man is, in fact, the only creature on earth whom God wanted for its own sake, and man can fully discover his true self only in a sincere giving of himself. Christ gave laws for everyone. I do not prohibit you from marrying, nor am I against your enjoying yourself. I only want you to do this with temperance, without indecency, guilt, and sin. I do not make a law that you should flee to the mountains and deserts, rather that you should be good, modest, and chaste, as you live in the midst of the cities.
God's help is never lacking if each person makes the necessary commitment to respond to his grace. In helping, forming, and respecting their children's conscience, parents should see that they receive the sacraments with awareness, guiding them by their own example. If children and young people experience the effects of God's grace and mercy in the sacraments, they will be capable of living chastity well, as a gift of God, for his glory, and in order to love him and other people. Necessary and supernaturally effective help is provided by the sacrament of reconciliation, especially if a regular confessor is available. Although it does not necessarily coincide with the role of confessor, spiritual guidance or direction is a valuable aid in progressively enlightening the stages of growth and as moral support. Reading well-chosen and recommended books of formation is also of great help, both in offering a wider and deeper formation and in providing examples and testimonies of virtue.
Once the objectives of the information to be provided have been identified, the time and ways must be specified starting from childhood. Parents should provide this information with great delicacy, but clearly and at the appropriate time. Parents are well aware that their children must be treated in a personalized way, according to the personal conditions of their physiological and psychological development, and taking into due consideration the cultural environment of life and the adolescent's daily experience. In order to evaluate properly what they should say to each child, it is very important that parents first of all seek light from the Lord in prayer, and that they discuss this together so that their words will be neither too explicit nor too vague. Giving too many details to children is counterproductive, but delaying the first information for too long is imprudent because every human person has natural curiosity in this regard, and sooner or later, everyone begins to ask themselves questions, especially in cultures where too much can be seen, even in public.
In general, the first sexual information to be given to a small child does not deal with genital sexuality, but rather with pregnancy and the birth of a brother or sister. The child's natural curiosity is stimulated, for example, when it sees the signs of pregnancy in its mother and experiences waiting for a baby. Parents can take advantage of this happy experience in order to communicate some simple facts about pregnancy, but always in the deepest context of wonder at the creative work of God, who wants the new life he has given to be cared for in the mother's body, near her heart.
Children's principal stages of development. It is important for parents to take their children's needs into consideration during the different stages of development. Keeping in mind that each child should receive individualized formation, parents can adapt the stages of education in love to the particular requirements of each child.
The first stage of development, the years of innocence. It can be said that a child is in the stage described in John Paul II's words as the years of innocence, from about 5 years of age until puberty, the beginning of which can be set at the first signs of changes in the body, in the girl or boy's body, the visible effect of an increased production of sexual hormones. This period of tranquility and serenity must never be disturbed by unnecessary information about sex. During those years, before any physical sexual development is evident, it is normal for the child's interest to turn to other aspects of life. The rudimentary, instinctive sexuality of every small child has disappeared. Boys and girls of this age are not particularly interested in sexual problems, and they prefer to associate with children of their own sex. So as not to disturb this important natural phase of growth, parents will recognize that prudent information and chaste love during this period should be indirect, in preparation for puberty, when direct information will be necessary.
During this stage of development, children are normally at ease with their body and its functions. They accept the need for modesty in dress and behavior. Although they are aware of the physical differences between the two sexes, the growing child generally shows little interest in genital functions. The discovery of the wonders of creation which accompanies this phase and the experiences in this regard at home and in school should also be oriented towards the stages of catechesis and preparation for the sacraments, which takes place within the ecclesial community.
Nonetheless, this period of childhood is not without its own significance in terms of psychosexual development. A growing boy or girl is learning from adult example and family experience what it means to be a man or a woman. Certainly, expressions of natural tenderness and sensitivity should not be discouraged among boys, nor should girls be excluded from vigorous physical activities. On the other hand, in some societies subjected to ideological pressures, parents should also protect themselves from an exaggerated opposition to what is defined as a stereotyping of roles. The real difference between the two sexes should not be ignored or minimized, and in a healthy family environment, children will learn that it is natural for a certain difference to exist between the usual family and domestic roles of men and women.
During this stage, girls will generally be developing a maternal interest in babies, motherhood, and homemaking. By constantly taking the motherhood of the Most Holy Virgin Mary as a model, they should be encouraged to value their femininity.
In this period, a boy is at a relatively tranquil stage of development. This is often the easiest time for him to set up a good relationship with his father. At this time, he should learn that although it must be considered as a divine gift, his masculinity is not a sign of superiority with regard to women, but a call for God to take on certain roles and responsibilities. Boys should be discouraged from becoming overly aggressive or too concerned about physical prowess as proof of their virility.
Nonetheless, in the context of moral and sexual information, various problems can arise in this stage of childhood. In some societies today, there are planned and determined attempts to impose premature sex information on children. But at this stage of development, children are still not capable of fully understanding the value of the affective dimension of sexuality. They cannot understand and control sexual imagery within the proper context of moral principles, and for this reason, they cannot integrate premature sexual information with moral responsibility. Such information tends to shatter their emotional and educational development and to disturb the natural serenity of this period of life. Parents should politely but firmly exclude any attempts to violate children's innocence because such attempts compromise the spiritual, moral, and emotional development of growing persons who have a right to their innocence.
A further problem arises when children receive premature sex information from the mass media or from their peers who had been led astray or received premature sex education. In this case, parents will have to begin to give carefully limited sexual information, usually to correct immoral and erroneous information or to control obscene language.
Sexual violence with regard to children is not infrequent. Parents must protect their children, first by teaching them a form of modesty and reserve with regard to strangers, as well as by giving suitable sexual information, but without going into details and particulars that might upset or frighten them.
As in the first years of life, also during childhood, parents should encourage a spirit of collaboration, obedience, generosity, and self denial in their children, as well as a capacity for self reflection and sublimation. In fact, a characteristic of this period of development is as attractive is as wait a second. In fact, a characteristic of this period of development is an attraction towards intellectual activities. Using the intellect makes it possible to acquire the strength and ability to control the surrounding situation, and before long, to control bodily instincts, so as to transform them into intellectual and rational activities. An undisciplined or spoiled child is inclined towards a certain immaturity and moral weakness in future years because chastity is difficult to maintain if a person develops selfish or disordered habits and cannot behave with proper concern and respect for others. Parents should present objective standards of what is right and wrong, thereby creating a sure moral framework for life. Oh, okay, we're going to
Wow.
stop there for that
Okay.
part. I know, I have so many
Oh, my head.
notes.
Yes. This is so plain as day.
I know, it's so
No,
fantastic.
no
Yeah.
gray. Like
Oh,
it's
no.
never gray, but like you don't so often I feel like you have to be like sitting down to read something like this, to really absorb it, ponder it. This is like I feel like I could have been doing the dishes and listening to all of this and getting all it's just like point by point by point, you
Right.
know?
Here's what you do at this stage. I'm loving this, especially as an educator who, I've taken, secular, well-meaning, like abstinence-focused trainings. I remember when I was taking my sexual risk avoidance specialist training, and we were talking about curriculum design and program formation to promote sexual abstinence and a well-formed view of sexuality. Uh, I feel like with most things that are not Catholic, like it's just very surface. It wasn't this richness of the incorporation. I think because in a secular setting, so often moral is so relative, moral relativism is so prevalent. You can't say what the church is boldly saying, which is, look, guys, you can't present topics related to human sexuality without the moral component. Like our bodies and our behaviors are directly impact our soul and the state of our soul and that the moral law. And so I
What
love
age
this.
range would that sexual risk?
Probably like middle to high
Mi-
school.
Middle to high school. Yeah.
Right. So I just love this. I love that it's starting and I love that they use the words innocence. It just
Same.
the years of innocence. It's so true. That's what I'm safeguarding and it gets me so I just yeah, again, like strongly reject and find it so wrong when people say, oh, you're just sheltering your kids. Like, no, I'm not. I'm letting my kids be kids. Like, I want them to be little and enjoy being little and safeguard that innocence. And so I just feel so affirmed as a parent to know that the church is also saying that that's the right thing to be doing right now because that's where I'm living. I'm in the years of innocence right now. So I
For
know you are
sure.
too, Emily.
Yeah, it makes me think, okay, so you and I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and this was written in 1995. And I just think about some of the pluses that we have now versus then. I remember, I mean, the TV was everything for us. And, in that time in the world, there wasn't that much control of knowing what the next show is, what's coming up, what the commercials are going to be, what are my kids watching. And now I do feel like I think it's easier to be in control of what our kids are watching because of the streaming and stuff. We can naturally, they're not just surfing. Does that make sense? Like,
That
and then
does. That's interesting. Yeah. I
they
hadn't thought about
may
that.
yeah, they may come onto something, if it's like, cable in the 90s, like you didn't know what you were gonna scroll upon. And this is just, we do have much more control, I think, in that aspect in our home, right? Like, if you're controlling, if your kids, I guess as they age, that's gonna change, they can figure things out probably a little bit easier. But as far as when they're little, I don't like my kids watching commercials personally. And we're able to control that, in a
Right.
lot of instances anyway. So,
Right. Yeah. I Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, Emily. That's true because I think oftentimes today technology is kind of seen as, oh my gosh, there's just too much, and this is so, too much for parents. But you're right. It's one nice thing, I guess, about not like channel surfing and just having streaming. You can be very intentional about we're watching this for this period of time, and then it's off. So yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, because
yeah,
that's something. Yeah, even now with the kids when they watch something, and I'm in the room, I'm not watching it with them, but if like they were watching something and I heard this conversation between the characters and I was like, we're not gonna watch that show anymore.
and then
And
you
they,
just know,
yeah,
like
you just
we're
know.
we're moving on from that one.
Right.
Yeah,
And of course, it went over their heads.
of course.
Which is one thing I do like about this stage of innocence is like a lot of stuff, unless it's like so like visually grotesque, overt, if it's like in language and it's kind of like a passing joke or something that you have to know what's going on culturally to understand it, like they don't get it. So like as long as I'm like attuned to it, I can pick up and be like, nah, you know what? We're just not even gonna go in that direction and kind of move on. But
I don't I don't know about you, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. At this stage of innocence where my kids are, as far as things that rub me the wrong way in shows, it's very unlikely it's anything sexual based on what they're watching. It's more than likely it's something evil. It's some sort of something interwoven into the story that's just like, no, like we're not doing this. I would be curious to hear what you had to say about that.
yeah, I don't know if I'm trying to think if I've experienced anything like that I would say like Evil. I'm trying to think the other thing, the what I had heard most recently. It was like a joke between the two animated characters about this boy and his in a relationship, and I was like, I'm not gonna watch that anymore because it had already been something, and I feel like this is where the Holy Spirit and God, right, helps you in your parenting and your discernment. I'd already kind of been like, do I really like this show? Like it was already kind of one of those things, like I was on the border, and then I heard it, and I was like, okay, yeah, we're not gonna do it anymore. So
I love when God confirms things like that so
right.
easily.
Right. I think like having that parental intuition, like listening to that rubbing of the conscience or whatever it is, yeah, it can be helpful. And you're right. I guess in some senses, like, yeah, to use the word evil would probably be accurate. Well, I'm feeling like that right now with Halloween. Like we're driving around. What is up, people? What are you doing with these weird decorations? Like Halloween is such a weird, to me, I find it so weird that people like get so into this
We
season
have
with
been
decorating.
talking. I wonder as Max is getting older, like for Isabella, she's just getting older each year, and it just brings up even more in-depth conversations. She cannot figure out why people want to be scared, and it makes no sense to her. And it is kind of hard to describe at the age of innocence, like
Right.
it because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
driving around and like there was one person had like a blow up witch in their yard and she had like a smiley face on her, like she had a happy face. And Samson was like, "Mommy, it's a happy witch." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." Anyway, I try not, I just don't. I'm like, guys, we're just not going to talk. That's why I say, I'm like, we're just not going to talk about it. Like, there's just no, I do. Like, I really give them the impression that, like mom and dad just think that stuff is like kind of stupid. Like, it's a waste of our time. We're just not even going to really address it or look at it. It's just ridiculous.
I mean, we were just talking about this on the way home from mass yesterday. Anytime we're in the car, this is just like you're saying, it's always coming up. And we were talking about this is something you're going to see every year. It's
Right.
this time of year, it's going to happen. You just have to try to protect your eyes. It's Unfortunately, I didn't mention this to her, but you will become jaded to it as you get
Right.
older. It's just is what it is. But as a child, I mean, when we were growing up, people put Christmas lights on their house. That's
Right.
what they did. They did not, they they didn't decorate like this for Halloween. So I just imagine these kids now growing up in this. It's so normalized. Someone I just heard on a podcast say that Halloween is on par to pass revenue of over Christmas.
That's so
As far as
crazy.
how much people spend on decorate. Isn't that it's just
That's
so
so crazy
it's
to me.
so evil. Yeah.
I don't,
It's just
yeah. And to be honest with
that's
you,
really
like, I really do. I think I'm trying to think when I've talked about it with the kids or when it comes up as we're driving around. Luckily, no one in our neighborhood does anything weird, which is really nice. They just do like really pretty fall decorations. Is I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of weird. Like, I mean, judge me if you want. I'm sure you make comments about my own house. I don't really care, but I'm like, they're weird. Like, it's just weird. Some people are just weird and they do weird
weird
stuff.
is a good word
I
for
mean, that's what
kids.
I say. And like, I
I
think
feel
that's
like they
fine.
can understand weird.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm like, guys,
No,
I don't know. Some people are just weird. And I affirm it. Like, that is creepy. That is very creepy. We
absolutely.
should not, like,
Absolutely.
we're
Yeah,
not going to do that at our house. Like, that's
absolutely.
weird and creepy. We're not going to do that.
Absolutely.
So, just like if I saw something else, be like, no, that's bad. We don't do that. I think to call stuff out is totally fine because there is moral truth. Like, there
Well,
is,
and the
yeah,
curiosity of the child is
right,
trying to make sense of this, right? So
right,
they need someone to tell them if this is normal or not. They
right,
really do. They have
right,
no idea what to think. The happy
right.
witch, like, oh, mommy, look, like they don't know how to frame it.
Right, right. So the way my kids are being having everything framed is like that's strange and weird, and I don't, I'm freaked out by it. Yeah, you should be freaked out by it because it's odd. It's just so creepy. I don't know why people decorate their house like that. Anyway,
It really is.
yeah, it is. Okay, let's work through the
Yeah.
sections here. If you have any specific notes, I had quite a few notes. The first one was on section 64, the first
Yes.
paragraph there. And I
Yes.
just put like, I don't like most parents, we just don't know our responsibility. And I put a little of this on the church in that the way that we structure faith formation in our parishes is very much like, oh, just drop your kids off and the church will do it. And it's like, there is no, I think now we really need to overcorrect to an extreme so that parishes are like, we're here as a resource. Like we have resources for you. We can give you all these, this information, but you are the ones that are responsible for this, not us. And I just think it's created a handicap. And I want to say it's very well, obviously, very well meaning, well intended. But there should be something if the issue is that parents are not well formed to form their children, then our faith formation should be focusing on parents formation
I was
so that
thinking the
they can
same
form their
thing.
children.
Why is there not a class for the parents to know how to teach the prep for whichever sacrament? There, and then in turn, you're educating the parent and the child. How
Right.
many of these children that receive these sacraments perhaps know more than the parents do about the
Right.
sacraments? I'm thinking
Right.
confirmation in particular, you know.
Right. Right.
Um, that just seems kind of, for lack of a better word, obvious. Like,
Right.
why would you not? But it may go back to the the church is not understanding the role of the parent
Right.
as laid out in this encyclical.
Right. Our parish is not even like, do our priests in their formation not even understand like the gravity kind of like where the responsibility lies? And again, this is where I go to like the well-meaning intention of people saying, well, what if parents don't do it or they don't want to do it? Isn't it better that we just give the kids something? And I guess I just feel like, okay, but if we keep doing that, like if we don't let them hit bottom, if you will, in this area of parenting, how are they ever going to like feel the weight of their responsibility and make a change, you know? And that can even just start simply like you don't have to, okay, maybe you don't have to change your whole religious ed structure at your parish, but like just simply from the pulpit, like bringing these truths, to the congregation on Sunday to say like and have that be the precursor to a change in the faith formation process or
How amazing would it be for, I know priests are so busy. I don't even know if this is possible for so many of them, but how amazing would it be for a priest to lead a class going through different encyclicals like we've been going through and
for
just
sure.
elaborating because
Right.
the information for parents or married couples, either and or both, is so rich that I've never received any of this information had we not gone out and looked for it in these encyclicals or been recommended to read them.
Right.
I just, it's so, oh, it's so well done and it's so formative for the parent to help the children. Our society would change. We
Oh yeah.
really would.
Well, we
We
say
really
it in the Catholic vows that we will, welcome children, but we are also responsible for educating the children. And again, I think in the preparation aspect for marriage, it's just something that's so de-emphasized. Like, because a lot of the couples, most of the couples I worked with, probably especially during marriage, during engage, when they would have to come to do an NFP class, part of their engagement requirement, majority of them are sleeping together and living together already. Like maybe they already knew that they were doing that, even though the church said that they shouldn't do that. But if they're already doing that, how much more of the church, faith do they either not know or completely disregard? And in that case, well, should we be then, as the representative of the church, should you be then witnessing to their sacrament? Like they're not ready for their sacrament or they're not willing to live up to the Catholic meaning of marriage. So go get married at the city hall then. Like just not here. Like you don't want a Catholic marriage, you want just a marriage. So just go get married at city hall. I don't know, is that wrong? I don't know. Maybe it's wrong, but it's how I think.
I've talked to someone else about this, about other sacraments. I don't know the answer. I really don't.
I have quite a few friends and we've talked about that and
It
it's
doesn't feel wrong.
no. Like, I mean, you're saving them. Like, I remember Max and I were working through the Our Lady of the Rosary Family Catechism. I think I mentioned it to you, Emily. It's a series of online videos. It's so fantastic. The priest is great, and it starts with like the formation of they talk about the story of the children of Fatima, and he just goes through the catechism. It's basically like a question and answer, but he explains a lot of things, and he talks about entering into a sacrament in a mortal state of sin and how that makes the sacrament null. Like you can't do it. And it just feels, and I feel so hand strung because I'm like, well, I'm not a clergy. I'm not in the position to do anything, but it's like, gosh, it just feels so like you are, if you are witnessing to someone's marriage and this is the state that they're in and they're not working towards reconciliation with the church or honestly seeking after the truth and wanting to live that way, like, why are you getting married in the church? Again, I am just go get married at somewhere else. Like, it's just not a Catholic marriage. Like, it's just not a Catholic
Right.
marriage.
Right.
It's just, yeah, super, I don't know, one of my soapbox things. So,
I don't know, you know, we're coming up on our 17th wedding anniversary. And so I don't know how things have changed, if they have at all, since we did marriage prep. But I would be curious to know. I remember how ours went, and it came up about if we were having intercourse or not, and we weren't. Um, but in regards to your statement about do they know church teaching and they're disregarding it, or do they not even know? I not know that answer, actually. I had somebody just last night. She's like, I said, there's a question in the appointment that talks about if they're having intercourse. And she's like, oh, no, we're not doing that because you said we shouldn't do that. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. And we talked about chastity and all the things.
nice.
But I thought because I said you shouldn't do it, that's literally what I thought in my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're not doing it because I said so.
Mm,
Okay, in my head I thought, has no one else told you that? I said
mm,
ideally you wouldn't do this until you receive the sacrament of marriage because sex
mhm,
is meant to be experienced within the
mhm,
marriage and all these things. I don't know the answer to that. I don't
mm.
know if they like in regards to your question, is it complete disregard or is it just lack of knowledge? No
I think
idea.
it's lack of knowledge and lack of the awareness of the gravity of the action. Like we just the faith is so watered down right now, and sin is so watered down right now. And it's so sad because then it waters down God. Remember, we talked about this when I was sharing about my sister passing
Yes.
and that idea of like, oh, she's in a better place. And it's like, I hope and pray she's with our Lord, but I don't know. And to just willy-nilly say stuff like that, it just waters down who God is. And I liked what you just said, Emily, like, wait, because I told you so? Because in paragraph 70 here, it talks about like, forming our children, the growth of children's spiritual life, that this is also constantly needed because the motivation, it should be accompanied by a growing love of God because we love God. To know God is to love God, right? So why do we want to know God more? So we can love God more. Oh, yeah,
It's beautiful.
I think that's just so, yeah, it's just really important and it's really doing a disservice to the body of Christ. And we're all feeling it, we're all feeling it as the body of Christ. So,
Yes.
paragraph 68,
Yes,
parents must
yes, that's where I was headed next too.
So good,
Perfect.
Emily. Yeah. Parents must insist, where is it here? Must insist on the positive value of chastity and its capacity to generate true love for other persons. Parents should stress that Christians are called to live the gift of sexuality according to the plan of God, who is love, in the context of marriage or as consecrated virginity and celibacy. So this is funny. Max is somewhat interested in Elon Musk and how much he's worth. I forget how this like came about. Okay. I forget. I really do. I can't remember. I think he and Joey were talking about investing or something. And he's like billions of dollars. So this came up again the other day. And he said, Mommy, how much is he worth now? Which is like, what, 2 weeks after since the last time he asked me. And I was like, I don't know. He said, I think it's like $360 billion or something. I could be totally wrong. I'm just making up a number for the sake of this story. Okay, but he tells me this amount and I'm walking by him. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of money. And he asks me again, he asked me this the first time too. So, Mommy, is he married? And I was like, and I said, no. He said, or no, he said, does he have a family? And I said, well, that's kind of complicated, Max. And I think before he didn't ask me any follow-up questions, but he did the other day. It was like 3 days ago. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, does he have kids? And I said, he does. He's quite a few kids, actually. And he's like, oh, well, what's wrong? It's like, well, he's not married to any of their moms. And he looks at me like, he's like, oh, which is funny because, like, I don't remember ever having a specific conversation about any of that other than like the context of children. Whenever we talk about children, it's always like, oh, mommy and a daddy. Like, and he knows we have people in our life who are young people, which I'm so grateful to have them in our life. Beautiful young people who are not not having children before they get married, right? So they're practicing chastity in their state of life, and then they get married, and they will ask, Max has asked, like, oh, do they have kids? I said, well, they're not married yet. They can't be a mommy and a daddy. So it just knows, again, we never say that as like commenting on other people. It's just the context in which children come into the world is with a mommy and a daddy. Like, you can be dating, but then you become married, and then you can become a mommy and daddy. Like, that's kind of the sequence of events, in the way that we've described it to him. So he knew, like, he was like, oh, and his face, like, no one can see my face but you, Emily, right? But it was kind of like, oh, like, that's not good. I mean, that's pretty much what, he looked like. And I
Well,
can't
he's
remember. I
probably
think,
trying to figure out, okay, but how? Like,
right.
how does that
It's
work?
like,
Okay.
wait,
Yeah.
no, like, that's odd.
Yeah.
He didn't ask me any more questions. So I wasn't trying
Interesting.
to put the conversation off. It was just more like, okay, I've got to get on to the next thing, So we kept talking. But anyway, go ahead. What were you going to say about that section?
Oh, yeah. No, I think you read this part. You might, maybe not. I think you did. The last couple sentences here. They must insist on the positive value of chastity, its capacity to generate true love for other persons. I think you read that. This is the most radical and important moral aspect of chastity. Only a person who knows how to be chaste will know how to love in marriage or in virginity. Did you read that part?
I didn't read that very last
Okay.
sentence. Yeah.
I just thought that's the only way. This is stating the only way you will know how to be chaste, and the only way you will know how to love is to be chaste. I was
Hmm.
just that's so beautiful. That's nothing that's taught in the world.
I know,
Nothing.
it is so beautiful. And I love that this encyclical is such a beautiful blend of like parent example, culture you're setting up in life, and the community you cultivate for your children, along with direct instruction. Like, we need both. We need the culture and we need direct instruction. In paragraph 69 or section 69, I love that it tells us, correction is good. Correction is good as a parent. Here's the quote: I exhort you to correct with the greatest commitment, with the greatest commitment. And this is something I have to bring to confession sometimes, is my lazy parenting. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just tired. I'm like, one more thing, especially when you feel like you're doing it 50 times a day. But anyway, the quote: I exhort you to correct with the greatest commitment the vices and passions that assail us in every age. For if in some stage of your life, we sail on, deprecating the values of virtue and thereby suffer continuous shipwreck, we risk arriving in port devoid of a spiritual charge. I love this. I love this. I imagine this. We risk arriving in port. I think of preparing my children for their vocation. If port is marriage or if port is religious life, a void of this spiritual charge, the zeal for virtue, the zeal for self-control, for practicing chastity, for this love of God. I just think it's so encouraging to hear the church say, you are to correct with the greatest commitment, to be consistent. You are to correct the vices and passions that assail us in every age. I would even say, too, not just with our children, right? But within marriage. This is what can,
Absolutely.
and this is something I know, I think Joey and I have talked about sometimes, because we take it to different, we just have different temperaments and stuff too. But we have talked about it before we got married. Like, if our goal is to get each other to heaven, like, don't let me sit in my sin. Like, and even if I don't want to hear it, like, sometimes there's gentle correction is important, but it's also, I think, I don't know, Emily, I just feel like now, given our culture, I would even err on the side of, if you just do, even if you did it badly, at least you tried. Like, just calling something out, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it goes back to temperaments. You know your spouse, you know what they can handle.
Right.
Screaming at them might get you nowhere,
Right. Right. They'll
most of the
probably get,
time. Yeah.
depending on, regardless of your temperament, that's probably not a
Yeah,
good thing. Right.
exactly. So
Right.
I think it's really, yeah, knowing your spouse and knowing how they best respond.
Right. And same thing with our children, right? Like, to
Yes.
correct them. I just think it is like, we've talked about this multiple times, I think, just in reading this encyclical, but at other times of the podcast too. Like, am I correcting my child out of my own fear and uncomfortableness with the body and sexuality? Like, that's going to come across. And then there's going to be a message of like, oh, there's something wrong with the body or with what I'm doing. And that's not the message we want to send,
Absolutely. And I was thinking as we were reading this, just as another plug to Dr. Sadusky, the previous episode that we did with her and her books that she's written, How to Talk to Your Kids About Sex. I would definitely recommend listening to that podcast and looking into her books because I feel like she's going to be the one that's going to help direct all of these directives to the parents, or give you more tools in your tool belt, really.
Yes, yes, for sure. Yeah, I'll link to her website again in the show notes for those of you that are interested. The next section, I know we have to wrap up here soon, Emily. So
Yes.
just talk over me, okay, if there's something else too. I love in section 71, that little paragraph, it tells you exactly what the conversation should include. Like, I just love it. It was just like so perfect. And it's so helpful, again, even for people who are educators to know, like, okay, these are the parameters. And again, as a Catholic educator in this area, I find it really helpful because I have great secular resources, well-meaning, beautiful resources that are still valid and important for curriculum design. But I think when we're talking to the whole person, this is the meat and potatoes, of kind of where we want to
Absolutely.
have the framework. So,
Yes.
um, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, not to jump too far ahead, but in
Yeah.
76,
Yeah.
just talking about their curiosity and
Mm.
what um, that they don't deal with genital sexuality, but oh no, this is the one about pregnancy. Sorry. I just put a smiley face next to it because it made me think, sorry, I'm thinking about a different one. It made me think of your story I think it was the last week about with Max and the app and just gently
Oh,
um
right.
the natural curiosity about babies growing, and it just provides so much education and love. And I also think this also goes back to us talking about, for the families that are able to have children, multiple children, that sort of thing. I don't want anyone to ever underestimate the education around the whole aspect of expanding the family, and I don't mean sexual education, I mean just the example of living that out in your family for the children to see the baby growing in the belly, the baby coming home from the hospital, or however that goes. And then the growth of the baby that first year in particular, if the mom is nursing, if not, there is so much that is learned. I think that cannot we cannot over we cannot underestimate how much is learned, especially for young boys. Like, I guarantee Max remembers the twins and their first, months of life. This baby, I mean, he's the memories that he is going to have are just going to be even stronger. And I just think it's so beautiful to see what a little baby needs, what they do. It's just, oh, praise God for families with multiple children.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. There's a book, and I can't remember it right now, but I will find it and link it in the show notes. And it's such a beautiful, oh, is it Parenting with Grace? It might be Parenting with Grace. But it's uses theology of the body and talks about theology of the body as you go through parenting. And she talks about how in these early years, how the use of the visual use of the woman's body from pregnancy to nursing, it's just this natural visual of like this gift of myself that I am made to be a gift to others. And the female's body just has a unique way, obviously, because of her role in reproduction and procreation.
We're
So yeah,
glorifying God with our bodies, right?
exactly, exactly. Yep, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. And
important.
yeah, and the visual it provides for children. Um, I in section 75, I like that it again reiterated that, kind of like there's a sweet spot. Too many details are unnecessary, and so is delaying information for too long. So I'll list Dr. Sadusky's books and the wonderful psychologist we had on, the counselor in the beginning, closer to the beginning of our podcast, and just some different expert resources that we have that can maybe help you kind of decide what's appropriate at what time. The Birds and the Bees book, that's another great book. They go through different stages of development. So again, that coupled with, the church's wisdom of like praying, discerning, knowing your child and what they're ready for, what they're exposed to too. Like, do I really need to cover this topic right now? They don't, whatever they may be exposed to, like, I don't think we need to cover this yet. We can probably wait a little bit. Just kind of like have that dialogue with God and with your spouse is also
That's
helpful.
such a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because it made me think while we were reading this. I'm sure you hear this all the time. What age should I talk to my girls? What age? And I always default to, you know, your daughters. You know, some girls develop so much earlier than other girls. And I'm thinking of a personal friend who her daughter at 10 was ready. And she told me that. She said, Emily, I just knew. And you know, it really depends on the physical maturation of the daughter. And that also goes back to something we read earlier in the encyclical about having conversations with your kids, just talking to your kids. That's a great way, not only that's a great way to understand where they are at, developmentally. Like, are they ready for any of this, even though their physical body is showing, oh my goodness, they are headed towards the beginning of their menstrual cycle? Or you really do want to pay attention to that so that it's never too late. We talked about that with Dr. Sadusky, but you really do want to be on the forefront of the timing of all that.
Especially with our young people and the media. That's why I say I really think it's important to know, like, what are our kids exposed to, and what environment are we sending them into? Because there could be a kid whose environment, they're going to be exposed to a lot of things that you don't have. They're just more culturally influenced than maybe another child who doesn't go to, let's just say, like a big school, and they're home more. Okay, well, you have more influence, like you kind of know what they're getting or what they're not getting from peers or et cetera, from the culture around them. So I think that's definitely like an idea for prudence. And this might have been more in the section that you were just talking about, Emily, but I think also in section 78, I put this comment. And this again could just be like me and my weird personality. I don't know. But I don't like the joke of like boyfriend, girlfriend during the years of innocence. It's so ridiculous to me. It's just so not necessary. It's the last thing I want my boys thinking about. Like, no, he doesn't want to be her girlfriend or her boyfriend. I don't think that's cute. They're 4 years old. They're just friends. Like, no. And I don't even think it's on my kids' radar. So I'm kind of like, how does that start? I guess it
I'll
really, go ahead.
it's a I've seen I saw this growing up. My family never did this, but I had friends at school whose families did this all the time. I have talked to them as adults. They cannot figure out why this was so pushed. And it came from the aunts or the grandmother or oh, are you, like, is that your little boyfriend? All these things. And so it just, once they got into school age settings where it was, mixed with many kids, it was just the topic of conversation. It just,
Mm,
and once again, sometimes I think some people just don't know how to relate to kids or don't know what to say. And
mm,
so that just feels like something like, oh, that feels like something you might say, I guess. Maybe they felt that as an adult to a little, first grader or something. So anyway,
okay.
I've seen this lived out. It's very confusing.
Hmm.
And it makes no sense. And it's definitely not recommended in this encyclical.
Right. I just think it's so like just a waste of our time. Like it's the last thing I want my boys thinking about. Like, no, we're thinking about other things. And then I love it talked about that, like highlighting the intellectual, like getting our kids thinking and learning, just using your time, your youth is so precious. It's so precious. Oh my gosh, don't waste your time with this crap. Like just don't waste your time with this crap. Which is it's not crap. I mean, that's not true. Because later on I want you to be in a relationship and if you're
Of
called to marriage,
course.
like have a good marriage things. But right now it falls into the category of crap to me because I'm just like, it's just so distracting and so silly and pointless. And no, we're not gonna waste our time doing that.
Right.
Okay, section
Lastly,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go. I was
No, no,
just
go for it.
the last thing I wanted to say, section 81,
Mm.
just 3 lines, but I love about the Blessed
Oh,
Mother and
yeah.
talking about the girls and how they just naturally will develop maternal interests, babies and homemaking. I mean, and it's true, right? Um, Golly, that feels like a whole nother podcast, but I just loved that, you're constantly taking the motherhood of the most holy Virgin Mary as a model. Oh, it's just
Encourage
a
that they
model
should
of
be
everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
that they should be encouraged to value their femininity.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that is
Yes.
such a Even the word femininity, when you say it, it begs a softening of the heart.
It does.
Like
It's
I
like an
can't.
elevation of
Yes.
woman, right? Like
Yes.
femininity.
It's almost like up there with the word holy.
I
Like,
feel the same.
oh, to be feminine.
I
Like,
feel the
oh.
same.
It almost like it brings me down because again, I don't necessarily categorize myself as like the most gentle feminine soul. But when I say it, it's almost like maybe a word to like bring to meditation, like
Yes.
femininity. Like how, Lord, because I know you still want me to be me. Like how does that come? Like how does that come up? How can I display my feminine genius in my home, and just yeah, as a person, because then I'll be fully who you made me to be even more. Um, and I
Yes.
think there's
Fully
just so
alive.
much, yeah, there's so, woundedness and sin, all these things that can get in the way of that. And if it's something that is complementary to masculinity, we know that these things are something that Satan loves to corrupt and toil and distort. Because he doesn't create, he only distorts the beautiful and the true. So we
Right.
find ourselves, I know for me, like finding myself off put by that term to mean something, like to maybe as the mother, right, to investigate that a little bit more, to be curious about that reaction of like, what is it about femininity or about the Blessed Mother, about motherhood, about maternity and these maternal instincts that make me uncomfortable or give me a like a harsh reaction, a hardening of the heart. I feel my heart harden when I hear that.
Sure.
Um, okay, I just had two more. 83, including too much and imposed premature sexual information, the shattering of the natural innocence. I just was like, oh gosh, it broke my heart. And I think of some of the horrible things I hear about happening in our culture nowadays with what children are exposed to, whether it be in like a public library setting or in a school setting or just in a community setting. Oh, it just is so sad. This shattering of innocence under the guise of, no, we're teaching them and forming them and shaping them and giving them the truth. It's like, no, we're not. We're ruining their innocence and we're not trusting that actually as time unfolds, as they're, formed in beautiful settings and cultures and families that, naturally this information will come up and be presented. We don't have to force things and especially force the evil and the untruth and the distortions. It's just woe to us adults who condone that and push that
And encourage. Yeah.
and encourage that. Oh, for sure. And then the last one I had, Emily, was just an 84, um, asking, oh, that's what it was. Okay. Well, let's see. A problem arises when children receive premature sex information from the mass media or their peers who have been led astray or receive premature sex education. As a parent, this is something that I feel like in today's culture, because my kids don't go to public school, or my oldest doesn't go to like a public school or school in general. We homeschool. We are involved in a lot of extracurricular activity. We do a lot of things in the community. We engage with a lot of people. Is I don't know necessarily what everyone else's policy is or worldview is. And so before we get together for like play dates and things, I just have to ask like overtly, hey, do you guys allow your kids to have phones? Are they going to be watching screens in their room with the door closed? I did that recently. I was like, look, our policy is he's not allowed to be looking at other people's screens and like because they'll want to play video games if he goes to someone's house. Like that's fine if it's in like a communal TV, like in the living room, great. But we're not going to someone's room and closing the door and playing video games. Like that's
Amy,
just not
that's
acceptable.
amazing. Golly,
Well,
I'm not there yet. That
like
like as far
probably.
as like the situations haven't come up like that. That's really fast. I'm so proud of you.
Well, you just have to. Otherwise, what? Like the onus is on us, right? As the parent. So it makes the conversation a little uncomfortable because I'm like, well, maybe they'll think I'm weird or whatever it is. But yeah, it's still, um, yeah, it's still important to do that. So again, because if we're aware of our responsibility, then we know that the responsibility falls on us to ask those questions and to get that information. Because it's about our kids. So yeah, it's for the unfun part about being a parent, right? Is like sometimes we have to say the things that are not fun to say, but in order to, protect our children, safeguard our children, and just really get insight into like what the other family is and I always feel like I frame it very kindly, like, look, this is fine. Like, if you guys do that, okay, we'll just like find another time for the kids to get together in a different setting. Like, I'm just not going to send them over to your house to let them do that. So,
Right.
anywho,
Because you're talking about a situation where you would not be present or you would be present and they still might be in the room.
well, I guess it's just more like, if you guys like, if in your house kids have their personal screens in private spaces, we don't do that. And I don't want my child to be there because I don't know what they might or may not see on your screen or the kid's screen. Um, so that's really, I guess, what it is. Like, no, if the kids are sitting in the living room playing video games, like, I don't care, because that's what they'll like to do sometimes. Like, I don't know. I feel like, and maybe for some parents, they'll be like, oh, my kid cannot play video games somewhere else either. Like, okay, everyone has their thing. And Joey and I just know like our thing is we don't do private screens in private spaces without adult kind of supervision.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like it
So,
makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so proud of you for bringing up those questions. I can imagine sometimes that could be hard,
oh,
but
yeah, for sure. It's always awkward, but it has to be done kind of thing.
mhm.
And I think that's where, and we're so excited and love doing this podcast is like being able to talk to professionals who say stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's not even necessarily if the kid doesn't have a screen, does the kid have older brothers who has screens and will they be around? And that's really what I'm like aware now of. Like, I don't think this peer has a screen, but I know this peer has older siblings. Do they have screens? What will that be? Again, what will they be doing? So,
How often do you run into that where they're like, "Oh yeah." Does it happen? I'm just thinking about in the circle you're in. I wouldn't think it would. I don't
not
know.
a ton. No. I know there's like things that I'm just like, we just don't do that. Like we just do things differently. So I'm like, I wish that they didn't do that. Like at some sporting there's one sport that I know Max does, and sometimes they'll like some of the older kids will have like a phone, or even like kids that are just like a year older than him or close to his peers will have a phone. I'm like, why? Why do you need to have a phone? Like you're 10, this is silly. But yeah, I don't know. Whenever I've talked about it with parents, most parents are like, oh, no, like, I mean, I've never gotten like pushback or anything. I mean, everyone's just like, oh, yeah, we do the same thing. Or, oh, that's totally reasonable, not a big deal. Like, yeah, I've never gotten anything. Yeah, I don't know.
That's
Nothing's
amazing.
ever been negative. So it might come at some point, but right now,
That's
nothing
amazing.
bad's happened.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
okay. Anything else? I feel like we talked really fast at the end there.
I
But I
know.
was
I
like, there's so
know.
much good stuff in here.
I
I can't wait to
know.
go through the rest of the sections. I love how tangible it is. It's going to be
Same.
really great. So, all right. So if you haven't been following along in print, you can always look it up. It'll be in the show notes too. But this encyclical, I think this section is just going to be really, really valuable for us as parents. So, all right, Emily, it's been fun. Got to go get the little people up, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye,
Sounds
everyone.
great. Okay, bye.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.